talk about the negatives and the positives of Coed, which sounds very strange, but I hear that there's lots of positives from the other people that I've interviewed at Coed. And I want to know what you felt were the positives of Coed and living a sustainable life, especially within the community here.
The positives. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess for me it's just a lifestyle choice. If you enjoy living this kind of lifestyle, I mean, there's obvious positives of like fresh air and exercise. You've got no abundance of, physical jobs to do. And for some people, like, they might not welcome that because they just don't want to do that level of manual labour in their everyday life. But for other people, it's like it saves them going to the gym, it keeps them away from depression, it keeps them away from a whole load of ill health problems. And some people can see the value in that, others people can't see the value. So a lot of it comes down to matters of opinion and how you want to live your life. But for me, like, I need to get exercise every day, otherwise I won't sleep as well, I just see that as an obvious thing, and the fact that, I don't have to go to the shops anywhere near as much as other people have to go, because I just go out and get my food from the garden and come back and cook it. To me, that's a massive positive. For other people, it's just like, oh, that's a lot of work, They'd rather have the convenience of the shops. So it's an opinion thing, but for me, it's just like I've made that shift and choice in my life, and I've been doing it for such a long time now that I think it would feel quite strange to not be able to do that.
And the negatives to Coed, I know that there's, from what I understand, there's about 15 people within the community here. Is there kind of difficulties within that community when people kind of don't agree or don't see eye to eye, or do you see any negatives within the community itself?
Yeah, I'm kind of cautious about the use of the word negative, but challenge might be a better word, or problems. But a problem is an opportunity. If you look at it from a different perspective, there's opportunities for learning how to resolve conflicts in a more immediate way, because we do have shared resources here. There's elements where we take collective responsibility over a certain area, and if we have different opinions around those things, whereas if you're living as an individual along a street of individuals all in your own separate houses, you don't really care what your neighbour's doing with their back garden or what they might do, as long as it doesn't affect you. And when you're in a even slightly more communal situation, what other people do does affect you more, and you feel it. So you need to have ways of communicating that are good. So we've kind of turned what some people might see of as a challenge, like having to interact with people and having to talk to people and having to, spend time empathizing and feeling what they feel, in order to make sure that we're working as a harmonious group. So I see that as a positive, but the negative side can come through if we're not doing that personal work on ourselves and how we communicate. I mean, communication is vital. If we communication challenges, if we find it difficult to express ourselves, or when we do express ourselves, we express ourselves with anger or violence or whatever, then it's just going to ripple out much faster here than it would as an individual in your closed bubble. And also it's, you're more involved in other people's lives, inevitably, and that's again has a positive because you don't feel lonely and isolated.
I was going to touch on the loneliness. Do you think some people within Coed do get lonely?
Not nearly as much as in cities.
Yeah.
Not nearly as much. I think
It's
we're way more connected.
Quite a tight community when everybody sees eye to eye.
I mean, we can get a bit, I think, on a practical level, like the mud in the winter can be quite a negative, if you want to call it a negative. Challenge. It can be a challenge. But you adapt to those things. The physical challenge of it, I'm very dependent on the use of my legs and my hands and my arms and my physical strength. If I suddenly was to break a leg, it would be really difficult to be living here, I'd be really like, I could still do it, but, doesn't have the same access to, immediate jump off to a go and go to a hospital or a GP or whatever, you know, it's a little bit more remote. I mean, we're not living remotely, but those little things can make a big difference, especially as people get older. I think for people who are like in their 70s or 80s to try and continue living this lifestyle would be quite a challenge.
So, as far as your gardening is concerned, do you see any aspects or any kind of part of Coed being expanded? Where do you see the expansion going on as far as your kind of
Personal,
gardening
yeah.
and things? Would you like to see doing new things?
It's always expanding, you know, whether I like it or not. You know, things do grow. You know, the nature of things is that they grow.
But would you like more kind of areas where you can do other vegetables or trees? Because I understand you're planting trees as well.
I don't need any more space. I've got plenty of space and plenty of opportunities. It's maintenance is the thing. You know, it's not like you do it once and again a change in mindset. You know, we think you do it once and it's done, and then you tick it off your list and you go and do a new thing. Gardening's not like that. It's a continual relationship. So you're always going back to the same places and coming round and being like, even 20 years later, you might be like, actually, we really need to redo these trees. These trees were not, they've come to the end of their cycle.
So going back to when you first came and going into the present right now, my understanding is that it's quite a magical place and that it's kind of, it's evolved. Do you feel that Coed is magical in the sense of I don't know whether spiritual is the way, but I think as far as kind of freedom is concerned and sustainability is concerned, is that something that has kind of not made you stay, but what you found?
I mean, to me, I think nature is magical, if we want to give it that word. You know, anywhere where you can be close to nature has its charm and appeal. Maybe the reason why I stayed at Coed and didn't find myself in other communities is because I had a certain sense of freedom here to do what I wanted to do in a way that other places I had visited, because I did explore other communities, that maybe there was a bit less freedom, and here I definitely felt there was a lot of opportunity for personal creative like exploration. And I think because it began as an art community, not an eco community, it was an arts community, and I think the freedom that artists are given, still that nature of the freedom that artists are given to express themselves runs through into the kind of way we work the land here and the way we are as a community. So maybe there's that element that I appreciate that. Yeah.
So what I understand is that Coed is all about freedom. It's all about a community that can work together. It's all about unity. And it's something where sustainability is really important. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I'd say to an extent. I mean, if we think of freedom as something where there's no rules, it's definitely not the case, because we have had to install rules and regulations, you know, and especially now being an event space, we're having to follow all the kind of health and safety checks and fire regulations and, you know, kitchen inspections. It's you know, we're very much towing the line when it comes to that level of freedom. And even within the community, you know, people can't just turn up here and join the community. There's a process people have to go through in order to come and stay here. So in a way, maybe it's become a bit less free than it used to be when there was less rules and regulations, but it's more functional. You know, complete freedom is actually quite restrictive because it becomes chaotic and there's no coordination, you know. So yeah, there is freedom, but I think that freedom is within a certain framework that we hold together, based around like community meetings. For example, we have a community meeting every week which we're expected to attend, and there's an exchange that's expected, and we have to come to agreements with people about certain aspects of what's going to happen here on the land. So yeah, there's an element of that, but I'd just be wary of the use of the word freedom in a kind of very broad sense, because otherwise people will think they can just turn up here and start planting sunflowers in the vegetable patch.
So one more question, as far as kind of, do you think Coed could be sustainable in any other way possible, or do you think Coed has reached its heightened status and sustainability?
No, you can always go further. I think there's no such thing as, you know, having ticked that box completely. You know, and whether even full, you know, self-sufficiency or sustainability, if you want to call it that, is even desirable. You know, we should really question, like, you know, to be completely cut off as an individual or even as a group and have all your needs met from within that. Is that even a desirable goal for any group of people? Because it's a lot of commitment, and it could end up being more work than what would be, say, a village model where you have specialists in areas and they all collaborate and work together. So, you know, it might be that this bit of land here grows this particular crop, like let's say potatoes, really well, but on the other side of the village, you know, half a mile away, they grow carrots really well, and actually it makes more sense for us to both specialise in those things and swap and trade. So, you know, Coed is 180 acres of land, and as a community we're only managing about 7.5 to 8 acres. And we grow what we can grow easily, but we're not going to start trying to grow bananas or pineapples and stuff just for the sake of it, aiming towards a self-sufficiency in those things. We'd rather have a little bit of income coming in and be able to go and buy the things which we might choose to buy. But it's also having that security of knowing that, you know, if the shit really does hit the fan, we're not going to go hungry. We've got enough staple foods in the ground. We've got that resilience, that ability to you know, rely upon what the land can give us, that gives us more freedom, if you want that word again, to not be tied into the system of like supermarkets and shops.
That's wonderful. Thank you ever so much, Stephen. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Thanks ever so much.
Yeah.